Today's episode of Spirit Talks is brought to you by the support of the wonderful patrons of the Hermit Tarot's Patreon community. Thank you very much.
It's strange now that I'm
here. And the poster had actually fallen off the wall. And what freaked me out even more was she pulled the curtain aside and she goes, Padma, how do I even know it's you? How do I know it's really you?
Oh my god. Somebody say action. After all that. So welcome everybody to episode 2 of Spirit Talks. In today's episode we are talking about protection and the importance of protection as well. I have a guest with me. Before we introduce you, I just want to do Acknowledgement of Land, just in case, especially because we're going to be talking about spirits. So I just want to acknowledge the traditional land owners of this land that we are gathered on today, the Jabberkai people. I also want to acknowledge the elders, past, present, and emerging as well. So,
hi.
This is, I don't know how you want to be called, Ushi?
Ushi's okay.
Ushi?
Yep.
Excellent.
Because that's how you know me.
Yeah. And how do I know you? Do you want to
I'm your auntie, so your mother's younger sister.
Yes.
Yep.
So she's known me my whole life, you guys.
Yes. So I was there from the moment you were born.
Literally, yes. Cool auntie. Yeah. We've got cool aunties in general, I feel. Yeah. So the reason why I asked you here is because for those who, well, I don't think anybody that's on this channel would know, but first of all, we have a cultural tie naturally because we're related by blood. And also, I feel like I spent most of my childhood listening to ghost stories from you as well. Yeah. Whether they were like personal or just like cool stories that you'd made up as well.
Yeah, and stories that we'd heard from, you know, the family and mothers and aunties that, you know, passed down as well.
Yes, 100%. And I feel like that helped shape my idea of spirituality as well from a young age. Like,
cool.
Even though it's very far out and like maybe the worst side of, you know, spirituality, coming into contact with scary things, it still helps me look at, well, there's something more out there.
Absolutely.
And if you are experiencing this yourself, like obviously this is a safe place to talk about it, which I'm always grateful for.
Exactly. And look, I guess that's part of our culture as well, is when you have, like, you know, kids and gatherings and stuff, part of that is sitting down and telling, you know, ghost stories, or we call them Debol stories, like, you know, and that's an important part, I think, of our culture and tradition, because it does raise like the level of awareness around there are things out there that you need to, you know, watch out for, and there are ways that you can deal with it as well.
Yes.
So, and plus it's fun scaring you kids when you were smaller.
It was fun being on the other side too. I think I have like a weird relationship with horror movies now.
I know.
I love to be scared.
Yeah, totally. You're welcome.
So before we get deep into this segment, I do just want to offer a trigger warning to the audience, to people who are viewing this podcast or listening to it. We are going to be talking about spiritual themes by way of like supernatural themes. So if that is something that you're uncomfortable with, or if that is something that is a trigger point for you, you have been warned. Probably don't listen to this podcast. So we really, to get into the idea of protecting your energy and why it is so important, the first question that I wanted to ask is, what was your earliest memory of a like spiritual encounter, or like a ghost encounter, Debol encounter?
My earliest memory. Look, I've had feelings before, and you know, I think first you need to acknowledge that because culturally we're so open to the other side, there's always a lot of crossover. And, you know, when I was a small kid, Mum would always say that I was actually really open to that sort of stuff. So I found from a really early age, like I did have a lot of experiences, but it was more to start off with feelings, you know, to the point where Mum would say that things would happen to me when I was a baby, like I'd be 4 months old, and where we were raised, it was out in the middle of nowhere, like heaps of bush, and I think the next family was like a kilometre away, like in the middle of, you know, it was in the middle of nowhere. And I was about 4 months old, I was in the cot, everybody else had gone to school because I was much older, younger than my brothers and sisters. And then Mum was doing housework. She'd left me there, I was sleeping. and then noticed that I had woken up. She heard like some gurgling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then came in to check on me and found that I wasn't in the cot. Someone had actually placed me on the bed with like all pillows around me to make sure I couldn't roll over and off the bed. And of course she was like really like scared, and she went around and checked the whole house, but there was nobody there, like like human-wise there was nobody there. But her interpretation of it was because we were away from the islands and away from all of her family.
Wow.
And living down south, you know,
Yeah.
and she'd just had a new baby and none of the family had seen me. She interpreted it like they were just coming to visit and to carry me and to, you know, introduce themselves to me. Yeah, so that's probably the earliest story that I have of myself, but the earliest encounter that I can remember that's really vivid, and I know I've told you this one before,
yes.
was when I was about 10 years old. And
Wow.
we, when we moved back to the Torres Strait, we lived on an island. And again, it was like, you know, a couple of houses, like family houses, along the beach there. And I used to wake up really early in the morning to go for walks. And well, when I say early, like it'd be like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, you know, the sun's coming up and it's just really still. And so I'd go for walks like on the road or on the beach, and I'd take Bullet, our dog, with us.
Yeah.
And he was awesome. He's like a Labrador cross German Shepherd, like proper protective, but like really easygoing, like just a really cruisy, lovely family dog. And so he used to come with me when I would do these walks in the morning. And I was coming up to the end of the beach, and at the end of the beach, like nice white sand, and then up the other end, there were mangroves.
Wow.
And before you hit the mangroves, there was like this stretch where the beach dipped down, and it was like all rocks. And then the mangroves would like start, and the rocks would continue. So, and we knew kind of that was where you stopped and you turned around and you came back. Like you wouldn't go any further. You stopped where the white sand had finished. And so we were reaching that point, me and Bullet, and I was getting ready to turn around and go back. And Bullet just started barking and going crazy and was looking towards the mangroves.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, yep, yeah. Like, you know, there's a couple of wild dogs and stuff up there, so I didn't know what he was barking at, but it wasn't like him to bark. And so he took off, like in the direction of the mangroves. And so I was like saying, Bullet, Bullet, come back, like, because I was starting to be like a bit scared too.
Yeah.
And he didn't though. He just took off. And so as I was turning back, I was watching him run. And then as he was running and he got really close to the mangroves, something like ran out of the mangroves. And it was, first of all, I couldn't make out a shape. Like I thought it was one of those egrets, you know, the really white, long birds.
Winged, long neck birds. Yeah.
Flying out of the mangroves. That's what it looked like to start with. And then as I kept looking at it, I realised that it wasn't flat, it was actually standing up. And I realised it was a person with just all white, wearing like this white dress. And instead of like them jumping from rock to rock and going up and down with the rocks, it was just going straight. And then it looked like they were looking at me, like the face had turned and it was looking at me. And I froze, good ways, I forgot about Bullet, and I turned around and I just ran all the way home. And, you know, shaking and stuff like that. Yeah. And then Akka, your grandmother, my mother, saw me and she knew something was wrong straight away.
Yeah. It
And
gives
she-
you different vibes too. You can tell when it's not a person.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah. No, it was something different. It was definitely something different. But that was the first time that I'd been confronted with something like, you know, that literally.
That's a big confrontation too.
Yeah.
That's not subtle in any way.
Yeah, and I got the impression that their Bullet had flushed it out almost.
Yeah.
Like it scared it out from where she was.
Yeah.
You know, it was a female.
Yeah. Goodness.
Yeah. And that sticks with me, like,
It
you know,
would.
it
Hell
was
yeah,
really
especially
vivid,
'cause
yeah.
You're only 10 too, Ush. And I feel like to help put it into context too for people who don't know what it's like up in the islands of Torres Strait, it's very rare, like, especially in those days, to see someone wearing a completely white dress.
Yep.
Like, our whole theme with clothing is like colourful
Totally.
and patterns, especially like back then. If it was an older lady,
Yeah,
it would
that's
have been
right.
a patterned dress, or even if it was a kid, they wouldn't be wearing a white dress playing around in the mangroves.
Just really out of place.
100%. That's
And
not what you would see if it was
I
a
think,
person.
yeah, yes. But I think, you know, as well as that, we'd already, like, my childhood experience was all of the ghost stories and the Debol stories, and the theme was like there's this one spirit who does wear that long white flowing. So for me it was automatic recognition. Like I knew what it was.
Yeah.
You know, I could name it, and it wasn't happy, and so that I think that froze me even more. Yeah,
because you'd heard it and now you're
I'd
seeing
heard it.
And
Yes.
still so young too,
Yeah.
10, and to have that there.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was scary.
I think for me, the earliest memory that I could think of was when we used to live at the Gordonvale house.
Yeah.
And just to help put it into context to other viewers, Ashi knows what that house was like. But that house was just like an older setting house. It always felt like home to me, but it was probably built like what, in the 20s?
Oh,
maybe?
yeah, 1930s, I think. Like it
30s?
was an older style house.
Yeah,
And
very old.
you could tell that it had been extended, like there'd been extensions to it. Yeah.
So true. Even because like the bathroom was outside down the, like you had to walk out of the house and it was there. And I feel like back in the day that wasn't covered either.
Yeah.
Or it wasn't covered well to that extended patio.
Yeah.
It was just an older house and surrounded by like cane. It never felt scary at the time, but if you were going to move into a house like that, you'd think there's spirits here.
It definitely had a history, hey, like, absolutely.
The oldest that I can remember was just in that house and feeling presence and seeing little things, like when I'd be going to sleep in that room.
Right.
I feel like I would, and because I was probably like 8, 7, I don't know if I was like dreaming, but I know that when I was awake, there was just that energy, and they
like
didn't
you
feel.
felt it more than saw it, or was it a bit of both?
For me, it was like waking up from sleep, rolling over, and there'd be like a lady sitting at the writing desk. And it was pitch black because that town is so small, like it doesn't have street lights, or if they do, like it's way back on the street, the back isn't well lit. Yeah. So, and the back of that house was a cane paddock too, so it wasn't well lit, and I could just sort of make out like her dress, and it was very flowy, but it was always when I was like half asleep rolling over and I'd open my eyes and I'd see her, and she was always just sitting there. Yeah. Not looking at me, and never felt like malevolent, but I was kind of just like, oh, she must have lived here before, so I just accepted it, and I never really saw her clear as day, but I always felt like her energy after that around the house, and she felt like a grown woman too, which was strange. Like I remember thinking, how could she have lived in this house as a grown woman? Like the rooms are so small, like this isn't even the main room. It just made me feel curious, but I think that was the first encounter that I could remember. And then there was just so much else that happened in that house as well. That's when I felt like I had like more of a awareness of them than my other siblings at that time. Maybe they just weren't talking about it like I was. Yeah, I'm very lucky it wasn't malevolent or like scary.
I think you would have felt it though, hey, like, you know, they definitely give off there an energy or a vibe. And if there isn't any intent to scare or harm, like they do transmit that to you. Yeah. So I think if she was there, like maybe she just didn't even notice that you were, you know, like she wasn't aware to the fact that she was being seen. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, Mum always told me, and Athe too. Athe means grandmother in our culture, by the way, but I think I'm going to put up like little subtitles.
Yeah, totally.
Because we just fall into different lingo. But they always said that if you see something, if you see a spirit, if you see a Debol, or if you see a ghost, anything that doesn't resemble human, don't feed energy into it, like don't acknowledge it at the time, just keep your strong. So that was something that I always heard from you guys listening to ghost stories. Yeah. So I always felt like I couldn't give them that acknowledgement, even if I did see. I wasn't going to talk to her. Just, okay, she's writing.
Yep, absolutely.
3 o'clock in the morning, that's fine. I'll go back to sleep. So, yeah, that would have been my earliest memory. And I feel like that introduced me to this idea of, like, there are things that are happening around you that you don't always see.
Absolutely.
And they do need to be respected in a way.
Yep.
Like, I could tell that she was so familiar with that house that she was just doing something that probably felt natural to her.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
I was like, okay, roll over, go back to
I
sleep.
know, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of the thing, is knowing how much to interact and how much not to.
Yeah.
You know, like when you see those
Yeah.
horror movies or ghost movies where they go, "What do you want?" It's like, don't ask them that.
Don't ask them that. Why are you here?
Yeah, how can I help you? It's like, no.
Don't invite them in. So true.
But it's respecting, acknowledging,
Yeah,
that there's definitely another world that we're living side by side with.
Yes. And I think that's where I wanted to ask too. This is probably, you would have been very young, but, well, same here, but did you think of any way to protect your energy back then, or was there something that Athe did at that time after you'd had that sighting?
Look, we'd always, first of all, she growled me for going out by yourself early in the morning. What do you want to walk around by yourself for? I told you not to. So I got a growling first, but like, our thing is always that acknowledging and respecting, and that I suppose it comes back to that, and that we call it that sake toke.
Yeah.
Like when you come across something that there, like, is there, even if you see it, feel it, hear it, know in your bones that it's there. One thing you can do is, because you don't necessarily know what it is just to throw your respect and intentions out there, and they're acknowledging, I know that you're there. I'm just letting you know that. I mean, no harm, and this is what we're here for, and we're going to treat your land or place with respect, and then we'll be on our way from there. So that was one thing that was always passed on, like, is that you can acknowledge, protect, and our intentions, make sure we put them across, but also, like, recognize that you've got a whole body of ancestors and loved ones who are actually with you at every point. Oh, I'm going to cry.
Yeah, I know.
At every point. And when you feel like there's something there, actually you've got people who are behind you to make sure that you're protected, and almost who are there to talk on your behalf as well, like to the other world. So, so to call on them and just say, I always call on my grandma, like my uckers, to look after me, and that's something that you can do as well. Like, let them know that that you just want them there with you and standing next to you. Yeah. If you feel if you know that something else is there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was exactly what you guys had taught me as well, and how I treated those earlier instances.
Yeah.
I just acknowledged that, okay, there's something there, but I didn't intervene. I just respected her boundaries and was like, oh, well, she's not causing me harm.
Totally, I'm not going to.
But later on in life, that really did help when that energy is more malevolent, and you're kind of like, oh, gosh, where do I go to now? What do I do? How can I protect myself? Because this is feeling like it's going to hurt me. So I do want, well, you pretty much answered that question. We're going to ask how culture plays a role, but that's how we were, that's how culture and spirituality merge for us, isn't it? It's very much like it's like woven in like fiber in the fabric of what our culture is. It's a part of it. You can't have that without spirituality and a strong connection to who came before you. Yep. Especially, like, I feel because that bond is built up so intimately when we're alive. Like, there's that strong emphasis on family when we're alive, whether you're blood or adopted in or
absolutely, or extended or
there's no concept of like second and third cousins in our culture. It's just family, brothers, sisters, not even cousins. You don't really say that, or aunties or uncles. It's just mum and dad. So I feel like having that strong connection to family throughout thousands of years builds that strong connection to ancestors. It just feels natural to ask them first.
Absolutely, yes.
And if you know the name, Akka always told me the same, just call them by name for support as well. It just is almost synonymous, culture and interactions in that way.
Like, our culture is so entwined with spirituality and respecting that there is a whole other world there that we walk side by side with. And all of, like, most of our traditions and like rituals, and it's all meshed together with supporting and recognizing and celebrating that side of it. but then there is also the other side of sometimes it's not there to do you. You know, it is there to cause you harm, and this is what you can do to protect yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I did want to talk about that next,
Yeah,
if you're
cool.
ready, or do you want me to talk first? Up to you.
Oh,
But
no, you go.
Sure.
Yeah, you go. See how it goes.
Sure. Well, I was just going to say, like, what instance really prompted you to be more protecting of your energy? Because I think when I was a kid personally,
Yep.
it was just, Mom, I saw something last night. This is what visited me in my dreams. And we would talk about it, and she would help me identify whether that was someone who had passed, or
Yep.
whether that was something that wasn't at all related to family. Even just weird dreams. There was always
Totally.
that open discussion. But as I got older and I started to be more, I don't even want to say open, I guess I was just less careful.
Yep.
That nerve is what I like to call it, was just wide out in the open,
Yep.
exposed. And we had a lot of things happening in our house too. This would have been around the time when I was like 16, 15. So there was just so much energy in that house at that time. There was like a real negative energy in that house. And that experience was just like probably the worst that I've had in my whole life, because I was asking for support in the sense of like spiritual concepts too, by the way, like not in terms of like other physical traumas, but like spiritual trauma.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the worst part of it all, there were little things happening, like doors closing, lights turning on and off, windows would open, you'd hear footsteps around the house. And it wasn't just me too, like obviously we had all the kids there, so there was 6 kids at that time, or maybe there was still only 5 at that time, and then obviously you had 2 adults as well. All of us were hearing that, footsteps, people walking on the roof too, that sort of thing. And sometimes it would sound like they weren't on the roof but in the roof. And the way that that house was built, it's like a crawl space that's like that tall, basically. You can't walk in there if you're a human. It's to that point where it's even and measured. Like you'd be crawling and scuffling, and there's insulation, like it just wouldn't work. So that all culminated in me actually physically being visited by like this entity at night. And the way that it started, I think I was in my room one night and I could just feel that presence. And up until that point, like I had encounters with more like malevolent energy that wasn't family. They were just like, hey, you're here, you're awake, like you see me, can you see me, testing me almost. So I knew what it felt like when something like that visited me and it wasn't family. And all the hairs on my neck just stood up, and there was like this cold feeling that runs down my shoulder blades, and I was just facing the wall thinking, oh my God, you're going to have to turn around and see what this is. And it was probably only early, like it was probably only 10 o'clock, like I wasn't even asleep yet. It was 10 o'clock in the night, in the afternoon. But I rolled over, and between my blinds there was some light from the street lights coming in, and I could just see this super tall figure who was probably standing like head almost touching the roof.
Oh my gosh.
And just built, like tall statue. And over time, like I always say he, I don't know if it was a male or a female, but the energy was just very much like aggressive. And like
really domineering.
Very like, see me and I'm here and I'm going to make my presence known. Like I know you see me. And over time, like the shadow of what it was became more distinctive, and I could see like little features, and I remember seeing horns as well on his head, and I just thought, I don't even know if this is what I think it is, but it's definitely evil. And I kept trying, because up until that point that's what worked for me. I kept trying to like just not acknowledge it and go, okay, it is there, but I don't want it to know that I know it's there, and I'm just going to respect that it is there for whatever reason. But at the same time, it hadn't ever been there before. So over time, that didn't work. It wasn't meant to be there. It was just testing the energy of the house and seeing, like, I guess, the weakest link or the most open person who was going to see it. And it got so bad that some nights I would even feel it, like, come into bed, and just the hot breath on the back of my neck. And I'd just be lying there like, you're joking.
Oh my gosh.
And there's no way that you could mistake that. Like, at that time it was coming into the colder parts of the year too, where it's not like we live in a warm
Yeah,
place,
yeah.
so it's not going to be super cold, but you shouldn't be feeling hot
Yeah.
air on the back of your neck like that, and it feels like it's a breath that's just billowing. And I didn't know how to protect myself from that, so I did try praying, but at that point I didn't have a very strong connection to my faith. I wasn't going to church as much as we used to, and I
Yep.
was so confused as to what religion would be in that case.
Yes.
Anyway, like,
Yep.
how do I get rid of this?
Yeah.
So I did start doing what was this most logical in my mind now, and talk to our ancestors. And I knew from our stories that I had a strong line of female figures, so I called out to them especially, and I said, please, Ackers, any Ackers,
Yep.
you know, even if I haven't met you, I know you're there, I feel you all the time. And I think at that time too, I called out to specifically, why can't I think of her beautiful name now? She visits me a lot though. She was a young Akka who passed very young. I can't remember her name, but she visited me before she passed to let me know, and I was like, okay, thank you, and I'll keep that in mind. So at that time I reached out to her specifically, and she became more of a stronger energy. It didn't stop that energy from leaving the house because it hadn't been invited in by me, so it couldn't leave with me, but it protected me and it made me feel more safer, and I stopped seeing it as often in my room, but I started seeing it more often with other people who were in that household.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess knowing the situation, yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Did anybody else see it? Like, did the other kids see it who were there?
Mum saw it, actually, and one night he spoke about it too. So the other person that was staying in our house had actually spoken about the fact that when they were younger, they would walk the streets and they would see their shadow, and there'd be a dog's shadow next to them and a tall man with horns on the other side, and it was like a gloating thing, like they were very proud. And this was like 2 months after the appearances started, and I was so like, I couldn't sleep. I was so shocked and scared, and to hear them say that, I was just like, you're joking.
Oh my gosh.
And it was very much like a, look how cool I am.
Exactly.
And here I was terrified out of my mind. So I was like, no, actually. And that changed my point of view, because I almost became defiant.
Yeah, totally.
I was like, hell no, am I settling for this then? It's not mine. It's not attached to anyone in this household. Like, it needs to leave.
Yeah.
So
That's terrifying. That's really scary.
yeah. Yeah, that was the worst for me, and that's when I realized, like, I've got to be more careful. I started getting into blessing oils again, making sure that that oil was blessed by a priest. That's something that's common in our culture now as well. And then I just started my, praying. And I didn't have, like I said, a strong connection to God or faith, and at that point, I wasn't sure where I stood with Christianity, so I was just praying to Ackers as many as I could, and even Athe Dhugu, because I thought he's a man of prayer. He's a strong connection, so he might be able to get closer. And that helped my room feel more safer.
And you were able to, you know, push all the other energy out.
Absolutely.
At least it was that safe haven for you.
Yeah.
But you know, like, that's the scary thing, is that if, you know, I mean, I think that person took it one step further, and it wasn't not the fact that he wasn't protecting himself, it was that he actually welcomed it, like that energy, you know.
Yes.
But you do have to be really careful, and you do have to protect yourself, because not only does different energy come with the people that you know that come in and out of your life, like, it's everywhere. It's in houses, it's in furniture, it's in jewellery, you know. I've experienced that as well, with having somebody else's jewellery on me and just having a really huge reaction to it. Like, all that energy lingers, hey? And you do have to, figure out that what protection means to you, and how you use that.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, that experience sounds really similar to the one that and I'm not laughing because it's funny, I'm laughing because it was so overwhelming. Like, it was a really overwhelming experience.
We're doing it now. I probably learned it from you.
Probably. When you're uncomfortable, you laugh.
You laugh, yes.
And I was quite young, like, I'd just gotten my first place and really excited about it, you know. But knew nothing of what it meant to to reclaim your, like to claim your space and to claim your energy and to have boundaries, like with whatever is out there, you know,
Yes.
like this is my sanctuary, this is my space,
Yeah.
like not understanding that. And I moved into this place and I was so proud of it, but very early on I realised that it wasn't mine actually.
Yeah.
There was something else there that was living there with me. And, you know, looking back on it, it was doing it in a way, all of the encounters and all of the signs that it would give me that it was there was actually intentionally trying to scare me, like trying to get a reaction, really trying to, and I don't know if that was the energy that it wanted, like that fear, that and responding to it like that, but it was really clearly saying to me that it was there and it did not want me there.
Wow.
You know, and we would hear, and I'd get Auntie Peggy to stay over all the time because I was terrified with what I would hear, and it was mainly at night, and it was all of the walking in the, well, it was that space between the roof and the ceiling where you could actually hear it walking across the ceiling, like the floorboards and stuff, and it was really there, that predictable, methodical walking, like footsteps of someone with two legs. And it was things, you know, moving and seeing shadows, like we'd be sitting down watching TV and it'd freak Auntie Peggy out. Like she'd go, I just keep seeing, and I try and focus on it, and I can't. Like, but there's a shadow that is just like there, and it was always in the same corner, and it was like it was poking around, you know, trying to look at us, and then when we try and focus on it, it'd disappear.
Yeah.
And so it was all of those little things, but I think what really scared me the most during that time was when it started, like, getting into my dreams. And that for me was the biggest violation. Like, you know, because you're actually in me, like, I'm dreaming of this, the energy, there's nothing I can do.
Right.
I'm actually really, really vulnerable when I'm sleeping and I'm dreaming. I'm not sure, did you want me to talk about? Sorry, you're probably going to have to cut this out, but talk about the scariest event, because it has to do with you.
Yeah, that's fine. No worries.
And, you know, you're my goddaughter.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time together growing up. You know, got such a soft spot for you.
I know.
Hey, like really I do, you know.
Yeah.
But I think, and this is what is so scary, is that I think this being or whatever knew this, knew that, you know, that I would do anything for you, and you know, you were the apple of my eye. And one of the times that I remember that actually led to me moving out of that place, because I just realised I wasn't in control anymore, and it was actually going to get to a point where I thought it was going to hurt someone, was when I had this one dream. It felt so real. So I was sleeping at night, and then all of a sudden I heard like this huge banging on the screen door, because there's like a screen door and then a wooden door at the front of my place. And it was you. And you were banging on the door and you were screaming at the top of your lungs like, Ushi, Ushi, let me in, it's me, let me in. And so I like sat bolt right up in my bed. Oh my God, what's going on? And on my wall, on my door, was like this yellow poster. And it was just blue tacked on, but in the dream that yellow poster had fallen down, and I actually had to step over it to go into the lounge room where the front door was. So I stepped over it, and you were still on the other side, and I couldn't see you, but I could hear you, and you were rattling the door and banging on it, and, you know, I could tell that you were really scared. You were going, Ushi, Ushi, let me, for God's sake, let me in. And if it was anybody else, I wouldn't have gone to let them in. But because it was late at night, it was you, I opened the door, and I went to open it and actually pull it open, and then I woke up.
Wow.
And I was in my bed, and, you know, the feelings that you described as like that cold sweat coming over you, and there's, you know, something running down your back, and that feeling of just, wow, like, I'm absolutely not even scared, I'm terrified, like something else is here. I woke up with that. Thankfully it was a dream, and then went to get up and turn the light on and realised I stepped on the poster.
Wow.
and the poster had actually fallen off the wall.
Wow.
And I realised I had to go now and like get out of that house.
Yeah.
So I went and grabbed my car keys and went around to Mum's place, Aka's place, your grandmother's. And so I was knocking on her window at like 2 o'clock in the morning going, Mum, let me in, let me in. And what freaked me out even more was she pulled the curtain aside and she goes, Padma, how do I even know it's you? How do I know it's really you?
Oh my God.
And I was like, Mom, just let me in. And that's what scared me. But she was already awake and she was worried about me because she dreamt about me and she knew something wasn't right. And so when I rocked up there at 2 o'clock in the morning knocking on her window, she actually thought it was another person taking my image, like trying to get her to let me in, which is what had happened to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I realised, like looking back on that now, that I was really vulnerable at that point. Like there were a lot of things happening in my life, and they're moving out on my own, being really young, not knowing how to protect myself, a lot of stresses, a lot of things that I was still coming to terms with and working through. So, you know, I was really vulnerable. So it made total sense looking back on it now that those things were attracted to me.
Yeah.
Because I, was definitely open and, not looking after myself. Yeah.
I feel like we didn't notice that till hindsight, at least for me personally. Obviously in the moment you're just trying to do what you can to get by, but I feel like the most significant events for me, especially bad, were at times when I was very vulnerable and there was so much change happening as well, and my energetic boundaries were crossed. Like at that time in the house, for me, I would have had no technical personal space. It felt very overcrowded, even though we'd always been there in the sense of mum and the kids, but it still felt like there was no peace there. So I feel like, and with all the change that was happening, especially at that time in my life with school, let alone with the family, so I feel like I just had I was a wide open gate basically of not knowing, naivety probably, and not knowing, and things were just able to come and back, in and out. So probably in hindsight, the best way that I did protect myself then was by creating more of an energetic barrier. And while praying worked personally, I feel like it helped, like you actually said it perfectly, visualizing you're pushing that energy back. And when I would reach out to the ladies in our family, I would just say, please, women. I would say, please, I don't care how old you are, like if you're a part of my lineage, please help me push this energy out. I would also visualize it when I was around that person, especially because I heard that this is attached to you, this is basically your fault, fix it, or like I'm going to push you out of this house, basically. So I would always visualize pushing them out of the house, and when I would talk to them it would be like an energetic push as well, and there'd be little things in that person's body language that I noticed, like slowly they didn't feel comfortable in the house. They would only, if nobody else was there, they would literally sit on the back patio and wait until we all came home. They would not be comfortable being in the house at all. And sometimes even when we were all there, I would be pushing, and that person would just have to walk out. And Mum would always go, why are you outside? What are you? And I'm just sitting there like, oh yes, it's working. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. You could figure that out for like at such a young age,
well,
you know.
It was that, or like have to almost go to bed with this creature every night, and I was like, heck no. Especially when I know, like, okay, there's a way through this, and that's not mine either. At first, I was like, why is this attached to me? Like, what did I do? I'm not out here playing with Ouija boards or anything. And interestingly, that was a question that one of the viewers asked for. Is like, would you ever mess around with a Ouija board? So I'm going to ask you first.
Oh, wow. I have, but it was like when I was much younger, and you know, we didn't know what we were doing, and like their hindsight, looking back on it, it was probably really silly because we were so young. Like we would have been 12 or 13, and we literally tore off a piece of cardboard from a box.
Oh, wow.
And like did the alphabet and the yes and the no, and we had like a glass with a candle in it, and some really some scary stuff happened during that
Wow.
episode where the glass did move, and it moved off the table, and it broke. And we didn't close it properly. And I know that, like, it's probably based on movies more than anything, but you should, you know, there's a practice behind it. There's a process and a protocol. And we didn't know what we were doing. And it wasn't fun because of how scary it was, and made me really, like, the shock value of this is proper stuff. And actually, you know what, it's not to be mucked around with if you don't know what you're doing. So personally for me, no, I would never do it. Because I have other ways to interact and other ways to ask, you know, for guidance or, you know, questions, or
exactly. Don't get a Ouija board.
And unless you do know what you're doing, and you're really respectful and you're thoughtful, and you put a lot of thought, in how you're going to do it and how you're going to close it and what the intent of it is. But I myself personally wouldn't do it.
He does this a lot. Sorry.
No, you're right.
The viewers and
He's going,
listeners
I
are
agree.
used to
Yeah.
Use other protection.
What she said.
But
Yeah,
no, same
so-
for me. I wouldn't. I had friends who messed around with it, and I literally like messed around with it. They didn't know what they were doing.
Yep.
And even they tried to close their
Yeah,
session, and
right.
it just wouldn't. Who's ever, and I think that's the scary part is you don't know who you're tapping
That's
into.
exactly right.
Which does cross over to tarot as well, and doing readings and channeling energy. But I think with a Ouija board, that intention is so open. There's no guidelines, so you could literally just connect with any energy that's there. And in her case, she was doing it with close family. Like, I think it was one friend, two sisters. So there were 4 of them in total, sitting in this little room back in Gordon Vale again.
Yeah.
Oldest town where everything spiritual was happening, Cairns.
A lot of history, eh?
Yeah, surely. But what happened to them was 2 of them, as they opened the session, had their hair pulled. And one of them, it was so subtle and slight that she didn't tell anybody until weeks later.
Oh my gosh.
The other one, it was so strong that her hair tie had actually come out, and it was just hanging on the end. And she didn't want to acknowledge it, but other people looked at her and said, "Oh my gosh, your hair tie is like hanging on the end of your hair. What's going on?"
My gosh.
But they pushed through, and like nothing happened to the board itself.
Yep.
But in that room, the window went wide open.
Yeah,
the blanket
right.
that they were sitting on tried to be pulled from under them. It was
gosh.
very violent from the way that she was
Sounds like it,
describing
eh?
it.
Yeah.
And she was very like scared to describe it to me too. We were only like same age, probably 14, 15. But she felt like nobody was going to believe her. So I just asked her out of curiosity. It was just me and her, and she wanted to tell me. And I said, "Oh my God, like I would never." Let alone now.
Right.
You've
Okay. So
told me
even back
what's
then, you're
happened.
like, nah, not something for you.
When she tried to close that session, that board just like slid off the bed. Basically, they were like, "No, you're not going to." So they had to get their aunties to help them bless the room afterwards and make sure that whatever it was, and it could have just been a trickster spirit, but still, that's the thing. You don't know who you're connecting with. So that's where I stand on Ouija boards personally.
Yep. Absolutely.
I do want to talk about how you've learned over the years to be more consistent with your energy boundaries, should we say? Like, not protection in general, but maybe just checking in with yourself and feeling whether you've attached or something's attached to you. And sometimes this is with people who are alive too. They just have energies that like seem to, oh my gosh, can you just...
Oh, yes.
So,
totally.
what's worked for you?
I've had to really think about it more in the new job, like the job that I have now. So I shouldn't say new, I've been doing it for a while. But with that comes a lot of big emotions, like big emotions. And look, right or wrong, if you have a level of trauma in your life, you attract certain things. So I've had to be really mindful now of preparing my space before I start work. And that's around, you know, this is my space. I'm in control of what comes in and what doesn't, and basically just do like a bit of a recheck-in of your energy, a check-in of your energy. And then at the end of shift as well, and after I leave work, it's again that, how am I feeling? just let everything go. Whatever it is, it stays there. It's actually not mine. It's not welcome to be attached to me. It's not actually mine to carry. They're the people around me, here to support me, and I name them, and they're the ones that are allowed to come into my space, and everybody else isn't allowed. So I've done a lot of that, and then the reclaiming of the house space as well. I do a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that kind of what you're asking about?
Yeah, literally, exactly. I think for me personally, because I used to work in a very similar line of work where we're interacting with a lot of people who have a lot of social issues, and you're just trying, more than anything, if you can't change the world, you just try to make like themselves feel more empowered or more safe. Is what I used to always try to do. And I wish I knew then what I know now. It wasn't until I started doing tarot more frequently for me personally that I realized energy isn't just spirits and things that have passed. Like everything, like you were saying at the beginning, everything has energy. You know, you buy something from a store, it has an energy to it. Jewelry, especially with your experiences. And it's the same with tarot. And I always saw tarot as like a resource of channeling energy through them. But they are an object that can hold energy as well. So I only started being more mindful when I started doing that more often, and I had to physically look at my resources as, okay, that's holding energy, I'm holding energy, like we have to try to clear this and also close it off or push that boundary back, as in, this reading's over, you need to leave. Because I've had some lingering energies too from readings where I've had to be like, okay, it's time, go, please. So I wish I knew that then, because I feel like the way that I prepare for what I do now is I drink as much water as I can. I set that intention of, this is my safe space, my body is my safe space, my home is my safe space. And I'm going to make sure that it stays that, even if I'm inviting another energy in, or if I'm letting a person in, you know, or a group of people, or if I'm going out to a different environment, this is a safe space and it's going to stay safe. So that really does translate into everything, and that's helped me be more balanced with social interactions too, when you come from that idea of, well, that person has their own energy and we may be having lunch together, but if they give me something, like they're giving me a little piece of their energy, so I'm going to take this home and maybe I need to smoke this, or just
that's
please
exactly
cleanse
right.
this energy.
Totally.
It is all energetic exchanges.
It is all energetic exchanges. And like it sounds like our process is really similar, where it's that reclaiming of space, and actually I can spend time with you and I can really enjoy that time, but I'm not actually taking on anything that you're throwing at me.
And some people don't know.
Takes and for me, I was one of those people where, I've got a low social battery anyway, but I was wondering why around certain people I would just go from being okay to actually I need to end this and I need to go, and I didn't understand why until I realised they'd taken all of my energy, like they'd literally drained everything. So
definitely
it has helped in social situations, and it's helped in relationships that are really important to me, like having your energy for people who matter, rather than those who don't taking it.
Sure. And I think that process, you don't even need to be, like, in terms of keeping your energy balanced and taking it back, you don't even have to pull out the incense or the smudge stick. Like, it could just be as simple as visualizing, like, I'm a cup or I'm a sponge with my own energy, my own fluids. And this other sponge may be a little bit drier than me, so they're taking some of my energy and some of my fluids. Maybe they don't mean to, but we do need to be aware of that some people just aren't going to have as full of a cup or as moist of a sponge as we do. So it can just be a visual thing of, okay, I'm going to move my sponge now and keep my energy to myself. Sorry, bye. But water and hydrating and recharging in that way has been a helpful way of just protecting myself as well, making sure that I'm a full cup in general, getting enough sleep, those silly things, like those practical, logical, basic things.
It's all ways that your body recharges, and if your body recharges, then it's got to feel good for your spirit and your mind and stuff as well.
Yes, 100%. The only other thing that I wanted to ask, because this is something that I've struggled with, a lot of people always ask me, like, how do you protect yourself if you don't have a strong cultural background? So obviously, like, for us, a lot of our protection rituals are forged based on our cultural practices. But if somebody doesn't have a strong cultural practice or a strong cultural background to fall back on, like, what are some of the basics that you would recommend to someone?
Look, I think human beings are spiritual beings, whether they know it or not, or whether they accept it or not.
Yeah.
And, you know, some people have faith that they rely on. Some people have, you know, that cultural connection that they rely on. But I think we're all sharing, like, the universe in one space and stuff. And it's around what you were saying with actually claiming your space in the universe. And it may not be in connection or you relying on another force, because sometimes you're force enough, like you are force enough to reclaim that. So there it's around knowing that this is your energy, you do have an energy, and it has a right to be protected. And the visualizations that you were saying is beautiful. Like, I have one where it's wind, and the wind for me is like my element, and I use that to cleanse and to wash and get everything away, and then it's refilled with, like, you know, my wind.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've never told anyone that, but yeah.
Oh, now you've told the world.
Now I've told the world. You're welcome. No. But that's, you know, it's around acknowledging that the process is just yours as well. It can be just yours, I think. And working on something that is true for you and actually works for you, I think is
100%.
something that you can do.
I think, if anything, like most things in life, we tend to make it too complicated.
Yeah.
And it should just start with being as simple as you, especially like, and I do want to do an episode on this later, but when you do become more spiritual, there is that question of, well, what is my faith then?
Yeah.
Especially if you've been raised one way, there's that big question mark of, well, do I believe in this anymore? Or how do I redefine it so that it does match my growing beliefs? So I feel like starting small, starting simple with just you, and seeing yourself as a part of the collective energy, and seeing that, you deserve that protection. It's not healthy, nor is it necessary for someone to expect your energy to be there. It's like,
absolutely.
that's really rude.
Yeah, I know. Right? Like, you're not invited.
Drink some water. Like,
totally.
I think start small, but keep it simple. It's you.
Yeah.
Protect you, and
absolutely.
use that visualization.
But it's funny because I think, you know, when you're younger, you definitely are influenced by what other people are doing and what people tell you, like the practices that they use, and that's all really wonderful. But there does come a point where, especially if you've been exposed or there's been trigger points in your life where you go, whoa, actually, I need to really think about how I set my space up, because what I've been doing there hasn't been working. And it becomes really personal. And it does become about you. And you draw on different things like your faith and your culture and all practices that you have or values that you have, and you figure out how they all fit in a way that not works for you but is in harmony. And that can take a while. For me, balancing Christianity faith with the celebration of culture and acknowledgement of culture was that was a clash for me in some respects, and it's taken a while for me to figure out how that is a balance, and and actually they work in unison, and they're not at conflict. But I think if you do it in a way that is suited to you, you have to start from yourself, and then you draw on things.
And I think incorporating like natural resources is almost like in your being, like you know, like I just automatically think of water as my element, but even like smoke with incenses, it's not so much the properties. Like people will say, oh, you've got to buy white sage from California, but that's a part of like another ancient civilization's cultural practice, because that was on their native land. For me, it's just the smoke and visualizing smoke as a cleansing natural force that can help me push, like, and I see it move with the breeze, and I'm opening doors and it's like, leave. With the smoke, leave. So I feel like that's a beautiful and almost like completely intuitive way. Like it's something that you don't know, like kind of like the wind analogy too. it just makes sense to bring that in if that's a good visualization tool
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So just to finish it off, I did want to ask you one more question.
And go for it.
I just wanted to say, can you think of an experience or maybe like an issue, because this happened to me recently and I wanted to share that with everyone because it involves everyone, but an experience or issue you had where at the time it just seemed like a series of unfortunate events or something else, like you maybe put it down to bad luck or just, you know, me being forgetful. And then in hindsight, once it solved itself, you were like, actually, that was a spirit messing with me. Or that was like something like, and that was an energy imbalance going on around me.
I can give you one that was a bit of a wake up call where it was, you know what, I need to pull myself out of myself a bit here, because I was internalizing everything, and it was actually the universe trying to like slap me almost in the face and say,
we love
wake up, like
that happens every reading.
Not about you.
Yes.
And you know, this was when it was another point where things were kind of imploding in my life, and they were getting really unmanageable and overwhelming. Where, you know, my relationship wasn't going well. I had given up a job that I really liked and I couldn't find anything else. I was really worried about my children because, you know, things weren't going okay, and I know I wasn't okay. My dog had just passed away.
Oh no, so it was like bang, 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 bang,
Yep,
bang.
I had to sell my car because the funds weren't coming in, and so it was just culminating to everything. And I was in my kitchen one day, like, just really feeling sorry for myself, like proper sorry, like when you go, whoa, like, woe is me, you know, I don't have this and I don't have that, like what is going on? I'm a good person. And there was this old Bible that was sitting there, and I just flipped it open to this passage, and I can't remember at the moment like what the passage was, but it was basically you have to give up everything to know who I am.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then it was like, oh, okay. Actually, you've stripped away everything that doesn't actually mean or doesn't hold true value to me to show me what I really have in my life.
Yeah.
And thank you, because like that's the true essence of what is everything that's important to me.
Yeah.
So... And like that was a wake-up call, because it was like actually I've been filling my life with a lot of things that I've been wasting energy and time on and trying to hold on to when it wasn't something worth holding on to. And it was a real thing for me to refocus.
Wow.
And it was just funny, like I can laugh about it now, but it was just at that point where I was so inside myself that I couldn't see that actually things were lining up to help me. Yeah, so that was funny. But there was another story. I'll just share this.
Yeah, of course.
And this was when I was a small girl, like maybe about 6 or 7 years old, and Akka was trying to make something for, like it was a dress or it was something for like a tombstone opening, and she was getting wild because her scissors kept disappearing, right? Like someone kept mucking, and we know not to touch her sewing stuff, like, and she knew it wasn't any of the kids, and so she was talking and growling her mum, who had passed away, like, what's wrong? Don't you want me to make these dresses so, you know, it can be ready for the tombstone, otherwise your grandchildren aren't going to have anything to wear, and so she was like growling her mother, who had passed away, like, help me out here, show me where these scissors are. And then sure enough, she went and did something in the kitchen and came back, and the sewing scissors were on her table.
Oh my Lord.
Yes. But then over the next like week, these scissors would just turn up around the house, like everywhere. Cheeky way. You want scissors? I'll give you scissors.
Whose parents are these?
So for the next week, like there'd just be scissors all around the house. And that was, I thought that was really funny, because that's something that, like, within their relationship, like, that Akka would actually do to,
Oh, my Lord.
to my mum, so.
That doesn't surprise me, though, and I could imagine her making that a big thing, too,
Exactly.
where she would have laughed about it, too.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Well, for me, it actually was my internet issues.
Yes.
Ironically, like, this is going to resonate more to the people who have been waiting for a personal reading from me. But when I first moved into this house, I had perfect internet, and I saw it as an opportunity. Okay, like I've got a place to myself, I've got these rooms now, I can set up a filming room, and like my intention was to just like do the most, like in the sense of like this is my first opportunity to really like expand and look at everything. So I basically like had all these plans for May. I was going to be doing personal readings, and I really like set myself up to basically have like no spare time in hindsight, but I was so excited about it I couldn't see that. And then one day out of the blue I got a call from the real estate that somebody was coming to replace a door, and that's all they said. So he came, I invited him in, and I was like, here's the door. And then they started working on the outside of the house. And what they'd done was they just replaced like cosmetic things, like the awnings, I guess, or the, I'm not sure what you would call them, but just cosmetic, like it looks nice on the outside. But that's where the cable was connected to. And when they went to reattach it, one of the staples must have clicked the cable. So at the time I was just like, okay, the internet's down, I'll report it. And then I realized, oh no, the internet's down, like my whole job's online now.
No.
So at first it was going to be something that was supposed to be fixed in 2 weeks, and then as it started setting in, I had to really like dial back and reschedule and restructure everything, and that caused the personal readings to be delayed. But it wasn't, honestly, like at the time I was just like, oh, it's just like a silly like issue, and Australia's terrible with internet, and it was something that I could almost laugh about because it was completely out of my control. I didn't call for him to be here, let alone cut my internet off. But then the issues with getting it fixed became ridiculous. Like, I had regular communication with my internet provider, but like NBN would just cancel appointments out of nowhere. And when I would check to see why, they would say, oh, we thought you cancelled it. And I'd be like, no, I didn't. So 1 and 2 weeks led to 1 and 2 months. And then in that period, after a month, I started seeing spiders everywhere. And that's not an omen for me. Like, I don't have any personal that I put with them. And with where I live, like, you're going to see spiders. But it started to get ridiculous. Like, I even started documenting it on Instagram because I was like, people need to see. Like,
everywhere.
Huntsmen everywhere. And they were big, too. Like, not babies. Like, the smallest was, like, that big.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, I put it all over Instagram. So just to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. And started calling them names, too. I was like, here's Harry. And Gerald. And then it's just like, amongst all of that, like those internet issues rolled over for about 2 months before I finally reached out to someone. Actually, I think I saw a post first. I saw a post that said, nowadays, if somebody hexes you or curses you, it could translate as simply as internet issues.
Wow.
It may not be, you know, your family getting sick or something.
Your milk from the cow drying up or something as it used to be,
Exactly. But if somebody wants to wish you harm, the best way that they could do that is
because that's total interruption nowadays.
That's like my whole business gone down. And it got to the point where I was like really having to restructure everything, and I was losing a lot of just like my regular routine, my plans, but also like the money that I'd like tried to save to like make this more profitable and substantial, because this is my full-time work now. And especially as a Capricorn, I was like, I'm always like 5 years into the future. Like, how can I set this up into like legacy energy? So all of that had been foiled, and I was talking with another tarot reader online. And she's the one that suggested, like, you've got to really try to do a protection ritual, like, around your energy, but also around your, what you use. Like, it's not just your cards, it's your equipment. Like, it's everything.
That's so true.
Visualizing that. And no joke, Ushi, this is the part that freaked me out, because I didn't think. I was like, no, it's the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that man who came 2 months ago
Yargar
and cut the bloody
to do the awning.
Yeah, it's his fault. But no, so I was talking to her on Monday. The intention came in. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it then. So Monday at about midday, I got an incense, same thing, like intention. I see the smoke. I walked around the house and I said, all negative energies, negative entities, negative spirits, you're not welcome here. And I said, please help me, ancestors, spirit guides, any family that's here, angels. If there is a negative energy in this house that's disrupting my internet, like, I want it out. Like, if it's disrupting my flow, because it's not going to just be affecting my internet. Like, it's causing frustration. It's making this place less peaceful. Because I'm just sitting here stressing. So I set that intention, smoked the whole house. By 5 o'clock that night, I got a call from my internet provider. I didn't ask for it or anything. And they said somebody will be there on Wednesday to fix it.
What?
And I was like, what?
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't think too much of it at first. Like, I was like, wow, that's quick. But at the same time, I thought there's no way that this is actually going to be fixed. Like, they've come 3 times before that.
Yeah.
Couldn't do anything.
So it's going to be a process. You're preparing yourself for that. Yeah.
But he came at 11 and left at 12:30, and the internet was back on Wednesday.
There you go.
After I'd smoked and said, please, if this is an energetic thing, get it out.
Yep.
So it's those little things that as well could be happening. And I think because I have such a public platform now, I do have to be extra careful with my energy and what I'm also allowing.
True,
by
exactly.
putting my image out there,
Wow.
I am inviting that as well. So that's a lesson that I learned.
Totally.
Personally.
There you go. I never thought of it like that though, eh?
Yeah, crazy. Crazy craze.
Oh my gosh.
But I think that's where we're going to leave it, you guys. Sorry to just blow your mind.
Like, what?
To close this reading, though, this podcast episode, I do just have an oracle deck here. So I just want to double check. This is something that I want to do in every episode now. I just want to see if I've missed anything and if there's any other helpful hints that spirits may have as well. So I'm just using the Psychic Tarot for the Heart oracle deck, because it's one of the oldest oracle decks that I have, so I'm most comfortable with it.
Yep.
And I just want to see if there's anything that I've mixed that my guides might think that I could add in, a way of helping other people protect their energy. Is there anything else that I may have missed, Spirit, that may help other people protect their energy? Oof. Okay, that was very purposeful to you.
Okay. Did you want me to grab it? What does it say?
Reach out.
Oh my gosh.
So it comes back to that original message. This card was actually reversed from my point of view, but it was facing you, Ushi, in the upright.
It almost jumped into my hand.
So what this card tells me is it doesn't have to be complicated. The 3 of Wands reversed is literally like, actually this is the 3 of Pentacles reversed. So it's not even about your energy, it's about your space. So what Spirit's really saying with this card is that it doesn't have to be as hoodoo voodoo as your energy and the collective. They're literally saying it's as simple as your physical boundaries and being mindful of who you allow around you physically, what you allow into your home, being protective over who you collaborate with and who's in your environment as well, and not overcomplicating that as well. They're almost saying that if you reach out to people from a space of lack, you will attract more lack as well. So in a weird sense of if you are worried about your energy and you're reaching out to people who are just sort of distractions, then they may just be filling a distractive void and not actually offering positive influences. They're people who will drain us more than supplementing us. So it really just comes back to protecting your environment and your physical as well, not needing it to be as complicated as energy, but just as simple as this is my home, this is my body. And I physically don't want that in my house or on my body.
And I think before we started recording, I had a phone call that you know is the energy is very invasive. So I think that's a really good reminder of that needs to happen regularly, because if I deal with this person regularly, then there's gonna be that overwhelming. Yeah.
Oh my Lord, that might have been
feeling.
I know. But no, I think that's all I have. Is there anything else you want to add before we close off?
No, I just want to I've just really enjoyed this topic.
Oh, yay.
Yes.
I feel like we could expand on it further
Totally.
and invite other people too.
Yes.
I wanted to invite Sinead because she's going through a little bit at the moment, but I don't think she should do it when she's freshly in it. So we'll see.
Absolutely.
Before we go, I just want to thank you, my beautiful guest, for being here and for joining me and for choosing to join me too. This is definitely a topic that's a bit tricky, like you don't know if you want to do it or not. So, but I hope that today's episode in the least has been somewhat helpful, or just something that can put things into context better. I do aim for this to be more of like a conversation, so if there's anything that you as the viewer or the listener wants to add, please feel free to comment down below, share your experiences if you feel comfortable. And if you are looking for future or current episodes of Spirit Talks, you can find us on Amazon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Deezer as well. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I shall see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.